Just a minute. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the May 2024 edition of the St. Lawrence County's Chambers Lunch and Learn webinar series. I am Laura Pearson, Business Development Coordinator of the St. Lawrence County Chamber. This monthly educational webinar series is made possible by the generous support of the St. Lawrence University and Clarkson Universities, who are leadership circles supporters of the Chamber. I would also like to thank Katie Berry, our Canton Community Coordinator and our Communications Coordinator of the St. Lawrence County Chamber of Commerce for her tech support and assistance during this webinar. Before I introduce today's presenter, I want to run through a few items. First, your mics have been muted and your webcams have been disabled. But if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to type them in the chat window and we will do our best to answer them. Please note that this session is being recorded for the purposes of broadcasting it on our webinar archive and our YouTube channel, which is named the SLC Chamber NY. After the presentation is complete, we will open the floor for any Q&A. We do keep the webinars to under an hour so you can get back to work. Are you interested in presenting or have a topic you would like to see us present? Please let me know. I would like to introduce and welcome our esteemed presenter, Angelina Blank, Apprenticeship Business Developer from SUNY, who will discuss the SUNY Apprenticeship Program. Welcome, Angelina. Where'd you go?
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. I lost Katie. That's who I lost. Okay. Go, girl.
Let me share my screen.
Okay.
Oh, first, let me put it in center mode. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Like Laura said, my name is Angelina Blank, and I'm an Apprenticeship Business Developer with SUNY. And today we're going to be talking all about apprenticeships. There we go. So I have an 11-county catchment area. I physically sit in Potsdam. I work from home, but you can see from the map, these are the 11 counties I cover, which include all 7 of the North Country counties and 4 out of the 5 central New York counties. My main role is to do business development. So I engage with companies and I let them know about apprenticeship programs. But the other thing I do is I coordinate with all the SUNY campuses in my counties to figure out how we can best support companies that have apprenticeship programs. So here's what we're going to discuss today. An Apprenticeship 101, even if you are familiar with apprenticeship, people find reminders helpful because there are a lot of components to apprenticeship and then we start adding other components into it and it's a little bit confusing. So we're just going to go over the basics and why it matters and why it's helpful. Then we're going to talk about the SUNY Apprenticeship Program and how we as partners with DOL support companies and their apprenticeship programs. And then we'll talk about next steps for anyone who's interested in learning more, and then a brief Q&A. So before we get started with the actual presentation, I'd like you to take a second to just consider this prompt. Think of the most common challenges you or your company face with maintaining a strong workforce. So if you're a decision maker, your company, or you're not a decision maker, the company you work in. So what are some of the challenges that you face when it comes to finding employees, keeping employees? So if you're anything like the multiple companies that I've talked to, your answer might look something like one of these 4. Common one is people aren't coming to us already trained. High turnover for various reasons, but whatever the reasons are, there's just a continual turnover and they struggle to actually keep people for a long time. A lot of current employers are seeing that their workforce is aging out, they're retiring, and they don't know how they're going to replace these people. Or maybe they're going to replace them, but they're not going to replace them at the caliber that the retired people are. And then finally, there's a perceived disconnect between the company's values and the employee's values and how the company values, what the employee values. So sometimes there's that disconnect, especially you're seeing that a lot with the younger generations. So before we talk about apprenticeships in 2024, we have to forget the stereotypes. So a good chunk of what I do when I talk to businesses is dispelling myths. So obviously we've come a long way since apprenticeships first came about hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And so obviously we've gone way beyond blacksmithing and cobblers. But for people who aren't in the know, when you say the word apprenticeship, they still think that just applies to building and construction trades. So, and for good reason. So for most of the 20th century, a lot of apprenticeship programs were in the building and construction trades. But that's certainly not all the apprenticeship programs are limited to. And in fact, over the past 5 or so years, many more trades have been developed in the non-traditional fields, which I'll get to later on in the presentation. So here's what some modern day apprenticeships can look like. So all 6 of these are actual apprenticeship titles through the Department of Labor: CNC machinist, childcare assistant or teacher assistant, CDLA or truck driver heavy is an apprenticeship, apprenticeable trade, HVAC technician, welding, medical assistant, dental office assistant. So lots of titles that you hear, and most people do not immediately think, oh yeah, apprenticeship. So what is New York State Department of Labor's Registered Apprenticeship Program? So it's a proven workforce development tool. It's just one tool in the toolbox. It's certainly not the answer to all of workforce development problems, but it's an excellent tool to have. And the one thing I stress to companies is that you do not need to take someone brand new to put them in the apprentice role. And in fact, most companies choose to take an incumbent worker to put them in the apprentice role to help them grow within the company, but also it's less risky, right? So with an incumbent worker, someone who already works for you, you've vetted them in some form or fashion. You know their work ethic. You know whether or not it's going to work out. You have a good chance of knowing how it's going to work out. Whereas someone new off the street, you don't really have that knowledge. But so you can go either way, totally up to you. The 2 main components of an apprenticeship program are on-the-job training. So that's the employer side of things. So the apprentice works under a mentor whom the company designates, again, up to the company, it's their program. And for the length of the apprenticeship, they have at least one mentor. Sometimes they might have a couple, but they will always have one mentor available to them on site, available if they have questions. So generally speaking, an apprentice will spend 2,000 hours per year. That works out to a 40-hour-a-week full-time job. The other component of apprenticeship and what makes it really special is the supplemental education component that goes with it, and that's called related instruction. So in addition to training them on the job with a subject matter expert within your company, they're also getting this additional instruction. And why that's important is they're actually getting this, they're learning these skills at a training institute. It can be SUNY, it could be BOCES, it could be any other training institute that's approved through state ed. But they're learning these concepts, they're learning the theory while they're working a full-time job and then going and applying it, which is a much better way to actually learn and retain information versus learning the theory first and then applying it later, hopefully. So the trades, each apprenticeable trade has an outline, and I'll show you an example on the next slide. And at the end of the related instruction list, it'll say that each apprentice needs to spend at least 144 hours per year on related instruction, which that number might seem a little bit scary, but that works out to about 1 3-credit class a semester or 2 a year. So it's very much part-time college. So full-time job, part-time college. For each apprenticeable trade, and there are over 200 through New York State Department of Labor, they all have an approved trade outline. So Appendix A is going to outline the OJT work processes, and Appendix B will outline the theory portion and what they should be learning outside of work. So here's an example of the first page of Appendix A and first page of Appendix B for the Cook trade outline. So you can see if it's a time-based, I'm not even going to go into the different types of approaches, time-based, competency, hybrid. For now, we're just going to go with time-based because it's easier to explain. So in the work processes, you're going to see bold headings, and then approximate hours. So for the life of the apprenticeship of this one, which I believe is 2 years. So within those 2 years or 4,000 hours, the apprentice will spend approximately 300 hours doing things in section A. And that's how this trade outline works. At the end of Appendix A, it outlines how many hours they'll put in. So at this one, it says about approximately 4,000 hours. Then it goes on to Appendix B and outlines related instruction. And so again, this is that supplemental education that's going to really reinforce what they're learning on the job. So you'll see things like math courses, trade science and theory courses, and they all have to do directly with the job that they're performing as an apprentice. And there you see the minimum of 144 hours of related instruction is required each year. So in this case, that would be 12 credits or about 4 college classes if you go SUNY route or some other training institute. And then you will notice Appendix B topics are approved by state ed. So it's not just DOL who kind of has their hand in apprenticeship, but for all things related instruction, state ed has to approve the site as an approved related instruction provider. So why does this matter for businesses, for the employees, and the local economy? So here's why it benefits employers. So why should employers invest in the apprenticeship model? Really, the name of the apprenticeship game is being proactive. It's, like I said, it's a tool in the toolbox. It is not a quick fix. It is for long-term success, but it is proactive. So companies who don't have an apprenticeship program tend to be more reactive when it comes to filling high demand positions. But if you have a proactive approach and you're focusing on your pipeline and kind of building within the company, it's going to help with that. You're not scrambling to fill positions with less than qualified people if you can't find them. It's a tool to attract people to your company. It's a great recruitment tool. It's a great retaining tool because these people feel supported. You have been supporting them from day one with a detailed training outline and the SUNY support or the related instruction. And then if you choose to use SUNY and our funding, then it's SUNY tuition assistance. I wanted to mention a bit about positive corporate ethos. So there's a survey that I found that was done in 2022. And they interviewed dozens and dozens of companies that have an apprenticeship program in various sectors. And they were focused, the paper was focused on return on investment. So other, things, the benefits of the apprenticeship program, basically. And the top 3 benefits, the return on investment that the companies mentioned, 96% said they had an improved company culture. 91% said it improved their pipeline of workers, and 91% said it increased employee loyalty. So in terms of it being a workforce development tool, it's great, but it also has these added benefits. There's also no loss in productivity. You're not taking someone off the floor to go train somebody. Instead, since it's on the job training, they're literally doing the job alongside the other person, the mentor, the apprentice. So there's no loss in productivity. And then there's funding available. So there is SUNY tuition assistance on our end, which I'll get into when I talk about the SUNY Apprenticeship Program. There are also 2 incentives from Department of Labor. Well, one's from the Department of Labor and then one's a tax credit. So the Empire State Apprenticeship Tax Credit, for every apprentice a for-profit company has, they get a certain dollar amount in tax credits. That number goes up by $1,000 each year. And that's per apprentice. So if you have more apprentices, you get a bigger tax credit. There's also something through DOL called the Apprenticeship Expansion Grant. And I am more than happy to, if anyone would want to talk one-on-one more about the incentive that is, I'll just give you a very, very brief overview of what it is. It can be used to help offset training costs, including an apprentice's OJT costs, which is their salary. So per this grant through DOL, once you hit the 30,000 mark in wages for the apprentice, if you have this grant through DOL, you would get half of that back. The company gets 15,000 back. That's both for-profit and nonprofit. And nonprofits love hearing that one because 15,000 is nothing to sneeze at, especially if you're nonprofit. And that money just gets invested right back into the company, however they see fit. Again, that's a DOL program. I won't go into any more details. I can certainly put you in touch with DOL if you're interested in learning more about that program and more about registering a program, but that's all I'll say about that one. Why should an apprentice go through this? So it's an earn as you learn model. So if a person doesn't have that prior skill, they weren't upskilled prior to getting the job, that's no longer a barrier because you're going to be learning the new skill on the job while getting paid. You're going to receive a well-rounded education because, again, you're not just learning on the job, you're getting that supplemental reinforcing education. And if you choose to use SUNY for the related instruction, that's going to open the door for stackable credentials. So our tuition assistance isn't enough to get someone a degree, but it's enough to get people certificates, micro-credentials, and all of these things. If you've heard, maybe if you were at Liz Brown's webinar last month or a few months ago, she was talking about micro-credentials and how they stack into degrees. So it's a great foot in the door for people who are interested. Another great thing about apprenticeship programs is the wage progression. There has to be at least one progression built into the apprenticeship program. It helps people actually stick through it because if they're working towards a raise, they're more likely going to stay. But that also helps with the retaining aspect of it. And then finally, they're actually working towards a career. These trades that are apprenticeable, I think to my high school economics teacher who told us, and at the time I thought it was so silly, but here I am 20 years later still saying it. He said, you do not want a job. Job stands for just over broke. You guys want a career. And so that's exactly what these trades are. These are getting them towards a career. Oftentimes there are pathways within these. So the apprenticeship title itself might be entry level, but there's going to be pathways within that sector. I already said this one. So a little bit about our region and why this matters in the North Country. So every year, DOL puts out 2 surveys. They do a job seeker survey, and you can see from the image here that they actually just finished up the one for 2024. So while we don't have those results, we have the ones from last year. So they interview, the survey interviews job seekers. And for this question, and they break it down by the regional economic REDC regions. And so for the North Country, these were the top 3 reasons people said, what barriers do you face when it comes to getting a job? I don't have the right degree, certificate, or credentials. More than half said that. I don't have enough experience in the field. Half said that. And just under half, I have insufficient education or training. On the business side, they put out a business workforce survey. And for the North Country employers, what is the most common barrier to hiring a job candidate? 47% say lack of experience. So both sides are kind of saying the same thing, just in a little bit different way. The lack of pre-training, people coming to you trained, is what is keeping jobs from getting filled. And then I wanted to point this out. So this is from the North Country REDC's strategic plan from last year. And the quote is, job growth in the North Country is projected to increase 17% over the next 10 years. However, with this growth, there will be just over 48,000 occupations not filled by 2032 based on current labor force participation trends. So opportunities that leverage the North Country's current assets to build the workforce pipeline include excellent training facilities and educational institutions like SUNY, training programs like an apprenticeship program, and talent attraction programs that market the benefits of living in the North Country. So it's really important to have that proactive mindset if you're an employer in the North Country, because this is what the Economic Development Council has projected for our region. So what is the SUNY Apprenticeship Program? We are not a separate apprenticeship program, but rather we partner with and support companies, DOL, with a few different things. Really, the main arm of the SUNY Apprenticeship Program is our tuition assistance to support related instruction. We also have 2 different types of pre-apprenticeship programming. And then we also, campuses can apply for funding through our program to host industry roundtables. We actually just did one last week at SUNY Potsdam, where we invited businesses, organizations within the educational industry. So school districts, childcare facilities, and community health organizations. And we talked about 3 different trades. DOL was present. I was there talking about the funding, and then SUNY Potsdam specifically spoke about how they can support the trades that we were there discussing. So like I said earlier, when it comes to apprenticeship, building and construction trades do not need anyone's help in promoting the fact that they have apprenticeship programs. So our program at SUNY actually is meant to promote those non-traditional trades, and we cannot even support construction trades. So we support trades within advanced manufacturing, healthcare, human services, and basically any other non-construction occupations, those in IT, the financial sector, you know, teaching assistants, building maintenance mechanics, things like that. So as of April 1st, our funding amount went up. So even if you were familiar a little bit with the SUNY Apprenticeship Program, we have new funding available. So it used to be a blanket $5,000 for anyone, regardless of trade length. But those numbers went up to 6,000 and 8,000, and that's determined by the length of the trade. So obviously, 4-year trades are going to take more related instruction. It's going to be more expensive, so therefore they're going to need more money. Versus the 1-year trades, $6,000 is plenty, and they're actually going to have quite a bit left over, which I'll talk about in a sec. The funding that's available, our tuition assistance for related instruction, covers books, tuition, and fees for the apprentice to take the SUNY classes. These are non-matriculated students. People often get confused when I say I'm from SUNY. They think I'm from a campus and then I'm trying to place apprentices. That's not at all. We're not the pipeline. We're merely the financial support. So these are non-matriculated SUNY students. Sometimes these are people that have never been to college. Sometimes these are returning students. It's been a decade or more since they've been in college. So it's really a non-traditional approach to higher education, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. For our funding, so for the chunks of $6,000 and $8,000, what happens is those dollar amounts are allocated to the apprentice, and basically they start spending it down at whatever campus the company has designated to be the related instruction provider. So we're here in St. Lawrence County. I'm just going to go ahead and use SUNY Potsdam since they're, you know, I just mentioned them because we did the industry roundtable. So if someone wants to be a teacher assistant apprentice and the company or the school district wants them to use SUNY Potsdam, there's $6,000 at SUNY Potsdam for the apprentice to use towards the classes there. Teacher assistant is only a 2-year trade. No way they're going to spend $6,000 on 4 classes, right? The great thing about our programming is that the dollar amount, the 6 or the 8, is available to the apprentice even after the apprenticeship is over, which means if someone is interested in pursuing a degree, SUNY Potsdam doesn't yet have micro-credentials, but they're working on it. So let's say they work towards a micro-credential and they eventually want to work towards a degree, that $6,000 or $8,000 is going to be a really nice little to no cost foot in the door for that degree. So the point of apprenticeship and related instruction is not to get a college degree, but it's certainly a really great benefit for those who are interested either before the apprenticeship, or maybe they start taking these classes and they're like, hey, I kind of like this. I think I want to pursue a degree. So it's actually opening the door for some people who really thought college, I could never attain a college degree. It's really helping in that way. And yeah, like I said, it can lead to stackable credentials or degrees. We have pre-apprenticeship funding. And for the sake of this presentation, I'm not going to go too into the weeds about pre-apprenticeship, employer incentives, student supports. I'll give you a really brief overview, but I just want to kind of pause here and say the reason why I threw all of this on here is to really emphasize that there's a lot of support in this programming, because people, oftentimes the barriers to running an apprenticeship program, companies will say, is the cost, that we can't afford it. And so there are things that we are offering to help offset those costs. So for pre-apprenticeship training, it can be utilized in 2 ways. There's incumbent worker route, which is a company who already has an existing apprenticeship program. They've already gone through the process with DOL. They have their program up and running, and it's time for them to put an apprentice in the position, either for the first time or maybe they already had an apprentice, that one completed, now they need the next one. but they don't have someone that they're like, yes, absolutely, this person needs to be our apprentice. They're a little on the fence. They can utilize incumbent worker training where they can, up to $1,000, send a cohort of potential pre-apprentices to really anything, any kind of training that their local SUNY is offering. And really what that does is it kind of helps with that vetting process, because I can tell you, I've heard out in the field that there are people who love the idea of apprenticeship and they want to be an apprentice, but the reality of a full-time job and part-time college is too much. So this is an excellent tool available to companies to kind of get their feet wet, see if they'll work out in the apprenticeship role, because they would be doing their full-time job, the part-time college, without going through the whole process of registering as an apprentice. So that's incumbent worker route. The other route is one that is gaining a lot of traction. I'm really excited about because it's open to just about anybody. So community-based pre-apprenticeship is best explained as career exploration. They're short-term trainings. They're like boot camp style. So maybe a couple nights in the evening, a few weeks, a couple days a week for a few weeks. They have to be a minimum of 24 hours in length over that, however long the campus chooses to do it. Maybe it's like a week-long intensive, or like I said, maybe it's like a few nights a week for a few weeks. It covers a really broad range of topics, including soft skills in the workplace, which I know so many companies love hearing, because they say that's a real problem nowadays, especially with younger employees. Communication, professionalism, leadership in the workplace. Then it also includes things like building up your resume, starting a LinkedIn profile, because through these community-based pre-apprenticeships, completers will get a digital badge that they can put on their email signatures, on their LinkedIn profiles, which will, help them when they go out and market themselves. And then it goes into basic 101 level industry specifics, like what it's like to work in this field. What are some safety components? If it's like manufacturing, what are some safety components that are important to know if you want to go into this field? So if you recall a few slides back, people are saying they don't have the right trainings to get into jobs. And so they are either not offered the jobs or they're not trying. So this is an excellent way for people who, if they're in a job, right, not a career, but felt like they had no way to explore other options, this is an excellent way to do that. It's fully funded on the campus side, because the campus would get $1,000 per pre-apprentice. The pre-apprentice will now get a $500 stipend for completing this training. And then at the end of these trainings, we bring in local employers within those industries to interview these pre-apprentices. The main goal of it is to give them experience. However, it could also be a great way to get these companies introduced to people in the community who are interested in this field. So they might be finding their next round of workers this way. Like I said, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but again, there's employer incentives available for, if you hire one of those community-based pre-apprentices and then turn them into an actual apprentice, you would get $500 per apprentice. If you go the incumbent worker route, you have an incumbent worker that you're turning into an apprentice, $500 per apprentice, up to 10. If they stay for 6 months, it's another $500. It's nothing earth-shattering, but it's certainly helpful. We also offer student supports. So this is for people who are just entering an apprenticeship program, taking their related instruction at SUNY. There's up to $500 available for things like emergency supports, like something happens with their car and they need a repair and they can't get to work, or they can't get to their classes because they need money for a repair. There's $500 available. If it's a distance learning class and they don't have a laptop, they can use it for a Chromebook. So that's available to them. These are brand new incentives, the employer incentives and student supports, as of May 1st. So really, really great, really excited to be out there promoting these great aids. So I just wanted to share with you, some people, and myself included, when I first started learning about apprenticeships and the whole concept of a pipeline. So it's kind of hard to contextualize, it's kind of abstract. So I wanted to actually make a visual to show you how a pipeline of apprentices or mentor to apprentice and then apprentice becoming the mentor, how that could actually look. So in this example, Brian is an existing employee at a company. He's been there many years and he's been tapped to be the mentor to Jess, who's entry level. She doesn't come to them trained, but that's okay. They have an apprenticeship program. So she's in the direct support professional field. So she enters the DSP apprenticeship. She's also going to take her related instruction at SUNY Canton because they offer a micro-credential for DSP. So once she completes this apprenticeship, every apprentice, I didn't mention this, so regardless of trade, anyone who completes an apprenticeship program gets a journey worker card, or it used to be called a journeyman card, but they've degendered it. So now it's a journey worker card. They've taken that straight from the trades, but you can now have a journey worker card in anything that's apprenticeable, including direct support professional. So you can be a journey worker, direct support professional. So she'll get that credential. It's nationally recognized. And then she also, during the time of her apprenticeship, she was able to obtain a DSP micro-credential at SUNY Canton. So she leaves the program with this national credential, stackable. She has stackable college classes at a SUNY school, and now she's able to mentor apprentices. So the company now has 2 mentors. So Jess becomes the mentor to the next apprentice, who's Christina. She enters the same field, direct support professional, takes her related instruction at SUNY Canton. She leaves with the same things as Jess did. But Christina is interested in progressing within this field. She's more interested in that pathway, and she wants to work towards a college degree. She's got bigger and better things on the horizon. So she enters into the DSP supervisor apprenticeship, which is a trade, 2 separate trades, both eligible for $6,000. So that means Christina in total would have $12,000 available to her through the SUNY Apprenticeship Program. So she would leave both apprenticeship programs with 2 journey worker credentials. And because of that $12,000 in tuition assistance, which carried over even after the life of the apprenticeship, she was able to earn her associate's degree. And now she can mentor the next round of apprentices. So now this company has 3 mentors. And so that's what we're talking about with that pipeline. So if one of those mentors leaves, which of course we never want people to leave, but sometimes life happens and you can't predict it, right? So it's that proactive approach. That's okay. They've been focusing on that pipeline. They have other mentors, and they're just going to keep putting people into the apprenticeship program. So registered apprenticeship programs are collaboration. It's partnership. So where you have Department of Labor who implements the program, they provide technical assistance, they monitor the program. You have your related instruction provider, which again can be institutions other than SUNY. BOCES often are tapped for related instruction. I'm just promoting the SUNY Apprenticeship Program because there is tuition assistance available, which means there's no cost for the apprentice nor the employer to put them through this higher education upskilling. And then the employer or the sponsor, that's the term that's used for the company that has an apprenticeship program, is the sponsor who provides the OJT, all that good stuff. So it's all about partnerships. For those who are interested in getting started, if you like the idea of apprenticeship and you're like, okay, what are the next steps? There's 2 routes you can go. Directly with DOL, which would be an individual sponsorship. You apply with DOL, it would be your program. It'll be your name on the certificate of completion. And you work directly with DOL in terms of monitoring and implementing the program. It is a 2 to 4 month wait time because, as you might imagine, there's a lot of things that go on. Though I will say, I have seen the paperwork that companies fill out when they're interested in registering an apprenticeship program. It is not bad at all. I think it's like 5 or 6 pages. They work with you on filling it out. If something is wrong, they get back to you. They tell you exactly what's wrong. It's really great. Especially as far as state agencies go. So you can apply for more than 1 trade at the onset of application. So let's say your company is interested in 2 trades at the beginning. Great, you can do that. But you're kind of stuck in a probationary period that once you get approval to run the trades that you applied for 2 years, you can't add any additional ones because they want to make sure that you can run what you've applied for. So You can apply for one, you can apply for many at the beginning, but once you get approval, you're on probation for 2 years. It is a cost-free program through DOL, so applying, the technical assistance they provide, no cost. There's another route of sponsorship for an apprenticeship program. It's called group sponsorship. So if there's any people anyone here who's familiar with the Manufacturers Association of Central New York, MACNY down in Syracuse, they are group sponsors in many manufacturing trades. And so they would be a group sponsor and the company would be a signatory under MACNY. Biggest benefit to group sponsorship is the intermediary, or in this case, MACNY in this example, they handle the paperwork. They, along with DOL, do monitoring of the program, but really the intermediary takes care of a lot of that back-end logistical things, which is great for companies that don't really have the bandwidth in their human resources department to take on any kind of program, even if it's not even a huge lift. Some people just are like, we can't do it, or they don't want to. They can go with certain group sponsors. It is certain group sponsors like MACNY, CEG, they do charge for their services. So that would be a conversation to be had with them about that. So 2 SUNY schools are doing a pilot program through DOL where they are being group sponsors for a very limited number of trades like wastewater operations specialist, teacher assistant, certified recovery peer advocate. So through that, there is no cost. And there's no wait time or probationary period. That's the other biggest advantage, is you can kind of add trades whenever through intermediaries, but on certain levels, there is a cost if you go with a private company that's not SUNY. So going back to those quotes from the very beginning of reasons why, what's keeping companies from having a strong workforce. These are some possible ways to fix those quotes through apprenticeship. Again, it's not a magic tool that will fix everything, but it can certainly be very helpful. So people aren't coming to us already trained, but that's okay because we'll train them. And we're not only going to train them following a uniform, detailed training outline, but they're also going to receive additional related instruction as well. We struggled to keep employees, and they had high turnover, but through apprenticeship, they were able to fix that. Our top people have retired, but those people mentored their replacements before they left. So the transfer of industry knowledge happened and there was no scrambling, no hiccup in the workforce. And then where there was that perceived disconnect, there's a clear connection now because they're investing in their employees. They're investing in their training. They want to make sure that they're going to be upskilled to the best of their ability. So that does it for me. I will say, most people I talk to for the very first time about apprenticeship leave with so many questions and they leave scratching their head. So don't feel bad if what I've just told you, if you're left like, I have no idea what you just said, that kind of happens. And like I said at the beginning, it takes like a few sessions of like, yep, this is how it works. This is what it does to like fully grasp it. So I will stop sharing my screen and